You'll encounter the Pythagorean theorem often on the test. The Pythagorean theorem states that a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where a and b are the sides of the right triangle and c is the hypotenuse. There are several repeatable common triangles that show up, and we call these special triangles. The first one is a 30-60, where you have angles of 30 degrees and 60 degrees. In this case, we designate the short side as S. The longer side is determined by multiplying the short side by the square root of 3, and the hypotenuse is arrived at by multiplying the short side by 2. A good way to remember this is that it's the square root of 3 because 30 starts with a 3. And the hypotenuse is twice the short side because 60 is twice 30. We call this one the 45-45 right triangle because it has two equal sides that are created by two equal angles of 45 degrees. You determine the hypotenuse of this triangle by multiplying length of the short side by the square root of 2. The last one is what we call a triplet. It shows up all the time, and it's a 3-4-5 right triangle, or that ratio, for instance, 6-8-10. Congruent triangles are identical triangles. You determine that they're congruent by matching the angle side angle, side side side, or side angle side of the particular triangles. If they're identical, they're congruent. Similar triangles have equal angles, therefore they're proportionate to each other. And remember that when a line is placed parallel in a triangle, it creates two similar triangles. Change and average questions are common on the test. Remember, when you have a change in average, they're vulnerable if you go out to the totals, as in this case. Al, Bubba, and Sally have an average age of 17. Mary Jo joins a group and the average age goes to 22. How old is Mary Jo? Remember, we go to the totals here. So if the three of them have an average age of 17, 3 times 17 tells us they total 51 years. When we add Mary Jo to the group, the four of them have an average age of 22. So they total 88. There's a difference of 37 years, and it has to be Mary Jo. Portion problems show up frequently. In this case, a recipe says that 60 cookies use 3 cups of flour. How many cups of flour will be needed to make 150 cookies? Just simply set up your ratio. 60 is to 3, as 150 is to x, and when you solve, we get 7.5. You will find ratio problems frequently on the test. In this case, it's an expanding ratio problem. A high school has 700 students. The ratio of freshmen to sophomores to juniors to seniors is 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. How many juniors are there? Well, the key here is you've got to find the factor that expands or decreases the ratio to get to your total. So set up your ratio, 4 to 3 to 2 to 1, and we're going to multiply that ratio by a factor that inflates it to 700. We got to find out what that factor is, so we solve, and we find that 10x equals 700, so x equals 70. Now the trick here is, normally we think of the juniors as being 3s, but here the juniors are the 2s, so we multiply 2 times 70, we find out there are 140 juniors. We will discover there are two types of work problems on the test. The key to work problems is remembering there's just one job to do. In this case, we have independent work. One of them is going to work for a while, the other one's going to finish it. In this problem, Lynn can mow the lawn in 3 hours, Charles can mow it in 4. If Lynn mows for 2 hours and Charles finishes the job, how long will it take Charles to finish it? Okay, there's one job to do, and you determine their hourly rate first. If Lynn takes 3 hours to mow the lawn, he does 1/3 of the job per hour. If Charles does the job in 4 hours, he does 1/4 per hour. Well, if Lynn's going to work for 2 hours, he's going to do 2/3 of the lawn, which means there's 1/3 left for Charles to finish. So 1/3 of 4 hours, which is what it takes him to do the whole job, it'll just take him 1/3 of that time to do it. So 1/3 of 4 hours is 4/3 of an hour. 1 hour, 20 minutes. Teamwork we do differently, because in this case we've got to find out what their combined rate is. In this problem, Lynn can mow the lawn in 3 hours, Charles can mow it in 4. Working together, how long will it take them to finish the lawn? Well, we combine their work rates here. If Lynn does the job in 3 hours, he does 1/3 per hour. If Charles does the job in 4 hours, he does 1/4 per hour. We combine those using least common denominator. We determine they do 7/12 of the job per hour. After 1 hour, there'll be 5/12 left. Now, if there were 7/12 left, it'd take them a whole hour, wouldn't it? So it's going to take them less than an hour. And the proportion you have to focus on here is in the numerators. 7/12 would be a full hour. So 5 is proportionate to 7 as X minutes would be to 60. And we find out it's 43 minutes. So it's going to take them 1 hour and 43 minutes to do the job. Now, people moving problems are really pretty easy if you set them up right. In this example, Joan left in her car driving 50 miles an hour 3 hours ago. If Ellen leaves right now driving 60 miles an hour and neither one of them stop or slow down, how long will it take Ellen to catch Joan? Well, Joan left 3 hours ago driving 50 miles an hour. So 3 times 50, she's got a 150-mile head start. Joan is going to be driving faster and she's going to catch up. But she's only going to catch up at the difference in their rate, which is 10 miles an hour. If we divide 150 by 10, it's going to take her 15 hours to catch her. You must remember that the exterior angle of a triangle is equal to the sum of the two non-adjacent interior angles. We can prove this by showing that angle A plus B equals 180 because it's a straight line, and B plus C plus D equal 180 because they're the angles of a triangle. And if we substitute, we see that A equals the sum of C plus D. Now, when you see a triangle in the SAT and they don't say anything about there being a right angle and they don't give you anything about the angles in the triangle, what they're asking is if you know the sum of any two sides of a triangle must exceed the third side. An example would be a problem like this, where they say the sides of the triangle are x, 2x, and 7. What's x? Your answer choices are 1, 2, 4, 7, and 8. Now, you just pick two sides. X plus 2x is greater than 7. Therefore, 3x is greater than 7. So x is greater than 7/3. X is greater than 2 1/3. That's going to rule out 1 and 2. Then we pick two other sides. 7 plus x has to be greater than 2x. Therefore, 7 is greater than x. Thus, ruling out 7 and 8, leaving us with 4. Occasionally, they may ask you for the surface area of a cube. Remember that the area of a cube is side squared. You have 6 faces to a cube. So the surface area of a cube is 6s squared. They will ask you questions about the mean, median, and mode. Remember that the mean of a series of numbers is the average, the median is the 50th percentile, half the values are above it, half the values are below it, and the mode is the most frequent or common score. Let's say a teacher gave a test. 3 students scored 90, 1 scored 85, 180, 275, 170, and 165. Well, the mean would be your average. The median would be the midpoint. Half the values are above it, half the values are below it. So that would be 80, as there are 4 scores above it and 4 scores below it. And the mode is the most frequent or common score, so that would be 90. You must remember the order of operations. Remember the acronym PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. This stands for do all the work around the parentheses, evaluate the exponents, you multiply, divide left to right, you add, subtract left to right. PEMDAS, or please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Probability is dividing the total possible outcomes by the number of desired outcomes. For instance, in an easy one, You have 8 blue shirts, 6 red shirts, 4 white shirts. After taking a blue shirt out, what's the probability you'll take another blue shirt out? Well, you simply add up how many shirts we've got. We've got now 7. 6 is 13. We've got 17 total shirts. And of those shirts, we've got 7 blue. So it's 7 out of 17. If they want to make the probability question more difficult, they'll give more variables to manipulate, as in this case, where they say you've got 2 dice, each numbered from 1 to 6. What's the probability you roll a combination that comes up with a 7? Well, you look at this and you go, how many ways can I come up with a 7? Well, I can do it with a 1 and a 6, a 6 and a 1, 2 and a 5, 5 and a 2, a 3 and a 4, and a 4 and a 3. So I've got 6 combinations that will work. Well, how many total possibilities do I have? Well, if I come up with a 1 on one cube, how many different combinations can come up on the other? That's right, 6. If I come up with a 2, I get 6 combinations. So I have 6 combinations of 6 for a total of 36 possibilities, of which 6 can come up 7. So I have a 6 out of 36, or 1 out of 6 chance of rolling a 7.